We are working on a train heat pump. Right there. Another one right over there. Said I've had some icing and some freezing on this one intermittently from time to time. So maybe shutting on, shutting back off. I don't know if they're describing defrost cycle when they're talking about it shutting on and off or something, but the icing is obviously a concern. So we're going to check the charge on this thing, and then we're going to do some tests on the defrost controls on it. Let's see what might be going on with that. So, defrost control on this particular unit. We do have a red light flashing on it. 6 flashes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see what 6 flashes means on this thing. Right there. Defrost cycles too close together right there, number 6. So yes, suspicions are accurate on this. I'm gonna run it in defrost real quick, test it and see what it does. Fan shutting down, it switched. See how long it stays in defrost, so I don't know if it's the description of that means it's going in and out too quickly, or is it going into defrost too frequently, because these defrosts, you don't have the thermostat switch on it where it closes and initiates a defrost cycle, then opens, terminates, and then after another 30, 60, 90 minutes of runtime it goes into defrost again. This one does it demand based, where it's reading your outdoor temperature and your coil sensor, which is right there. So it's going to kind of go into defrost when it thinks it needs to. So does it think it's needing to too often? This is the way I interpret that fault, going into defrost too frequently. So I'm going to turn it off. We're going to start by checking these sensors and seeing if they're reading accurately. Alright, so we have got the power turned off. And what I'm going to do real quick, this has that outdoor temperature switch on it that controls when the defrost or when the heat strips come on and off. And let's see what that's set to. So I'm going to turn it up to, actually I'm going to turn it down to about 30, because I don't want those heat strips to be on while I'm out here doing this, just to not waste their electricity. But got that fault light, so first thing I'm going to do is drop the power to the board for a few seconds and see if that fault resets. It should reset with a power cycle and start over again. Obviously then if it's going into defrost too frequently and it's an actual true fault, it'll reestablish itself. If I put this back on and that fault's still flashing after it's reset, then it may be a board problem. But plug that back in, see if that fault goes away. So we got our green light, which is good, and our fault has cleared. So that lets me know it's probably not going to be a board problem, maybe one of these sensors. So let me get up here with this. And we're going to check these sensors on this thing, and there's a chart. So contactor just pulled in because the board reset. It's got a little bit of a delay. And I've got the breaker off. And let me get the paperwork out real quick on this. And there should be, it might be on this one. Usually there's at least a page of instructions, and it'll have my, there we go. So this will have our ohm chart for our sensors. It should be in the outdoor unit in that little envelope if it's still stuck in there with the service facts when you run up on one of these units. So we're going to ohm these sensors out real quick, and let's see what we get. Alright, so the first one I'm going to ohm out is going to be the ambient sensor. I've got my temperature probe there. The ambient sensor is right there for this unit. And then your coil sensor is going to be over here. The old style used to slide up inside of a tube. The newer models now, it just clips to your line. So we're going to see if one of these is reading out improperly. So the meter leads in the correct spot. So we're reading about 54 degrees outside. So we're going to take and just ohm. A problem keeping this camera from bouncing all over the place, but anyway, so we're just going to ohm this sensor out. It's our ambient sensor, and getting up here where you can see it, it's reading 17.4. Go to our chart. 17 ohms is 17 kilo ohms, but it's reading 55 degrees outside. And you can see my temperature probe's reading 55. So now we're going to ohm out our coil sensor. It's a little windy out here. Anyway, so let's ohm out our coil sensor. And this time I'm just going to try sliding these probes up in the back side of the plug. Should do the same thing. And our outdoor coil sensor is reading 29.8. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to put a temperature clamp on that pipe. We're going to see what the temperature of that pipe is. I'm going to go right over here, and that is the pipe that it's reading the temperature of. And we're going to go on the phone. Open up the app and see what that temperature is. So that pipe is reading 51.7 degrees, and if 17 is 55, 29 is not going to even be close. So if you look on the chart here, 29 would be telling us that that pipe would be about 33 degrees, roughly, somewhere in there. So it's reading about 20 degrees too low, which obviously the colder it thinks that pipe is, the more frequently it's going to think this coil out here is freezing, and then it's going to initiate, as long as the ambient temperature is below its threshold and reading correctly, it's going to initiate the defrost cycle in this thing just over and over and over again. So let's put a new sensor on it and see what we get. And we'll get this one off. Got some zip ties I need to snip. Maybe it's just that one, I don't know. We'll pull this thing out of here. The plug head to get through that rubber grommet. There we go. It's out. Let's see if we can get the new one in there. A little tight. If they had put this hole to feed these wires through about 3 inches higher and not right behind these two refrigerant lines where you're trying to get your fat fingers like I have, trying to feed them through there. Get in there. That through there, and then I'm gonna snap this sensor on there first, just let it sit for a minute, then I'm gonna check it, see if it's reading correctly. Should be. Brand new sensor. This one out there, stick that back there, and this one is reading 17.6. much better, basically reading the same thing as the outdoor ambient sensor. System is off, they're basically both reading the outdoor temperature right now. 17 is a lot closer to 53 degrees based on our chart. So this thing should be ready to go. Plug this one back up right there. Get this wire zip tied back up out of here so it's not on any of these refrigerant lines rubbing or doing anything. So I'm gonna double it back right there. And do I have a zip tie left? Yes, I do. Zip tie on, and that was the upstairs system that just came on. I'm gonna bring this up a little bit higher. That back there behind it, and then I'm just going to pull my excess over here into the electrical cabinet, which makes more sense for it to be in there than it would be for it to be all bound up and up inside here. Just don't want it rubbing on any refrigerant lines where you're going to get a wire rub. So now we're going to turn it back on, test the defrost cycle again, and that should take care of our problem. So that's kind of how you go through checking the defrost controls on these Trane heat pumps. It says demand-based defrost, not time with the switch. I like the switch because it's just one part. Either sometimes it sticks open, sometimes it sticks closed. You just replace it. This is a more efficient defrost control. The way it operates, it goes into defrost when it needs to, but we have two sensors tied to it, two more problems rather than one. So it is what it is. It's what they use. We'll run this thing through another defrost cycle. I don't know how long it has to be on in a call before you can test it. Sometimes it won't go right in, but I want to let the refrigerant cycle circulate a little bit before I make a reversing valve switch right now. Alright, it's been on about 10 minutes. So let's run a defrost test. This one doesn't have the quiet shift defrost where it just opens the contactor, cuts off the fan, switches the valve, then closes the contactor, comes back on, runs in defrost, and then when it satisfies defrost, the fan will come on first to drop the pressure down a little bit, then the contactor will shut off, then the reversing valve will shift, then the contactor will come back on and run. That's just kind of what they call quiet shift, or whatever you want to say. It doesn't shift refrigerant flow while the compressor is actually running. I don't know why it's not like that on all of them, but on this one, that's the way it works. Alright, the fan just came back on. It's going to pull that heat and that pressure out of the coil. Then you're going to hear that reversing valve shift again here in a minute. And we will have completed our defrost cycle. So anyway, guys, just a quick video on how to test these Trane defrost controls. Fairly similar to other manufacturers. Boards look different, but you know, either you got your switch that's sticking closed or sticking open on the time 30, 60, 90 runtime type defrost, or you got your demand defrost. It's going to have your sensors. More than likely, if you're having a problem with the defrost itself and it's not a refrigerant charge problem, usually it's going to be one of these two sensors. So anyway, guys, that's all for that. Like, subscribe, appreciate you watching, and have a good one. See you on the other side.